I have been trying to find a way, and now that I've found you.
Hi everyone, this is Sandy Alt reporting from the wild, and this is the audio podcast companion to my blog on Substack. This is episode 13. Is DYS-TOPIA?
Tell me, show me.
Spoiler alert, I'm going to mention some key plot points in one very old children's folktale, a few other legendary novels that you might have heard about, and then several modern movies and streaming series, so we can consider this Is Dystopia topic in the light of what we see from storytellers who may have foreshadowed and or currently captured the moment. Let's go way back to when many of us first heard the Hans Christian Andersen folktale about a vain ruler who persisted in a big lie that all could plainly see was false. The emperor's new clothes made us smile as children because, after all, the emperor had no clothes. But no one dared say so, and his sycophantic court and subjects reinforced the lie. Even young children could glean from this story the perils of blind adherence to authority, the cautions against pressure to conform, and the importance of critical thinking. It's a tale that aged well for almost 200 years, until it didn't. And now it bears an uncanny resemblance to a certain administration and its foolish followers today, doesn't it?
Let me know.
Some of us read this one if we took a political science class in college. Sinclair Lewis's 1935 dystopian political novel, It Can't Happen Here, set in 1930s America, pictures a Hitler-like dictator named Buzz Windrip rising to power in the U.S. In his campaign for the presidency, he says he's the champion of the forgotten man. But as soon as he's elected, he becomes a dictator on day one, outlawing dissent, jailing his political enemies in concentration camps, standing up a paramilitary force, and overriding the power of Congress. He goes after women's and minority rights. He appoints compromised judges and launches an invasion of Mexico. Uh-oh, did that hit a little too close to the bone, or what? Then, George Orwell's Animal Farm, published around the end of World War II, told of animals overthrowing a farmer and taking over. A charismatic dictator pig leader named Napoleon appoints corrupt committees to change the way the farm is run and to rule over the other animals. Here again, the control of the farm animals hinges upon upholding a series of lies, which change in nature from day to day, such that a pig has to climb a ladder nearly every night to repaint the latest version of things on the side of the barn as the narrative gets adjusted to suit the rulers. Erasing history is one of the hallmarks of this story, and we're seeing the fascists in the current administration taking down websites, removing records from public access, destroying all references to people of color and to women and more. Sound like a strange and distant world now? This stunning tale of how power corrupts is about to reincarnate this year as a new movie starring a jam-packed cast of big Hollywood names, proving the durability of a tale of dictators, corruption, and power. While we're in Orwell territory, why not consider how dystopian the novel 1984 must have seemed when it was first published in 1949. In the imagined future, the totalitarian state of Oceania is run by a dictator called Big Brother and kept in power through a cult of personality maintained by the thought police. The role of women here is centered around whether or not they can bear children, and of course, it's their duty to the party to do so. And I'm going to come back to the role of women in these once considered so alien to our world scenarios soon, but let's keep things in order. Let's fast forward to the great Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. When this book was published in the early 50s with a setting in future America, its concept took us on a journey to a world far removed from the one in which we lived at that time. While the most remembered theme is the outlawing and burning of books, which parallels all the book banning today, there was also plenty political correctness and control of thought and speech that closely resembles the current regime we suffer under now, with their anti-woke, anti-DEI, anti-woman, anti-decency fixation. It's a lot like the delete all DEI-related terms, information, and wokeness from all government websites, museums, and zoos pogrom that the Nazis in the current administration are performing, trying to censor the press, universities, public television and radio, and even Act Blue by using thought police under the carefully coiffed Barbie-bot Bondi's DOJ would fit right into the pages of this novel or into the frames of the many film adaptations made from it. All the books I've mentioned so far were published before most of us were born, but they were uncannily prescient, and they remain in the zeitgeist, reworked into movies and television series and more. Just like a novel that came out when I was a young woman, The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, first published in 1984, by the way, which is currently a well-produced home screen series. There is so much here about the roles of women and the use and abuse of them in a patriarchal society. But there is also plenty about the totalitarian Christofascism and bromantic machoism of the Republic of Gilead, a regime that has overthrown the United States government and created a ruling class built on the subjugation of women. The author, a Canadian, picked up on the vibes of real trends in the United States and imagined them into two novels in this series that were at the same time so real and so unreal that they were and still are terrifying. Look, I could go on here citing the stranger-than-fiction reality in which we now live as forecast by these dystopian novels, but here's what I wonder. Is dystopia? It seems like we currently find ourselves smack in the fear-filled, dark, dangerous, and dehumanizing worlds that were foreseen not only in these books and countless more, but also in a plethora of current television shows, movies, and streaming series. Let's start with the Star Wars series because most everyone listening to this podcast will be of an age to know a lot about these films and the offshoot series. Consider a massive empire of greed and control, technologically dominant with things like the Death Star. Our own version of this today, Starlink, privatized space ventures, lack of restrictions and checks and balances on technology, and the new global alliances among the big dictators like Emperor Palpatine and his lapdog in the Oval Office with his sidekicks Darth Muscovite and J.D. Grand Vizier. The thrilling, foreign, and super scary premise in the Star Wars series is that a rank bunch of evil and inhuman power junkies would band together and seize control over all the planets in their proclaimed empire and milk the riches and rights from every citizen in order to maintain might and more technological dominance. How exciting it was to see the rebels forced to use the future equivalent of duct tape and spit to patch together stolen and antiquated spacecraft, parts, and means of communication to create an underground movement with barely a whisker of a chance to even survive, let alone overcome, and the oppression and subjugation closing in on them like the ship's trash compactor does on Luke, Leia, and the Wookiee Chewbacca. How thrilling to see ingenuity, creativity, determination, persistence, and especially solidarity among all sorts of differing beings from countless cultures and species bring together a ragtag rebellion resistance that finds a way to win the day once or twice in the ongoing battles of sequel after sequel. Because of the stark world that George Lucas created in breathtaking detail through elaborate sets, costumery, visual sleight of hand, and because of the wild and often comical variety of species from throughout the galaxy that he depicts, we might not have recognized our own world as we first watched these lavish cinematic achievements. But when we view them again today and see stormtroopers policing civilian areas on remote planets, we might think about the kidnapping of Rumesa Ozturk by masked thugs without identification who, in a coordinated assault, whisked her off the streets outside her school into an unmarked car and spirited her away to an ICE detention center in Louisiana. Maybe the stormtroopers in the Trump-Putin-Musko-Vance authoritarian empire don't wear fantastical white helmets and plastic body armor, but you can damn betcha they have about as little hesitation to do evil as Lucas's imaginary army. When I watched the latest season of Handmaid's Tale, the world I see in it differs so little from the reality we are living now in this country that I want to cry. In my younger days, I had hope that we could overcome the bigotry, sexism, misogyny I was raised in. I worked hard to promote the ERA, needed my brother to sign papers for a student grant, even though he was younger than me, couldn't open my own bank account or get a credit card until a new law passed, and suffered the indignities of male-dominated health care through a miscarriage and the high-risk birth of my only child. In a recent interview at the University of Toronto, Margaret Atwood noted that the women in her fictional dystopian world of Gilead actually had it better than the women in Texas, Idaho, and Georgia today, because pregnant women in Gilead had the best health care. Every birth was tended by the best doctors, and those capable of giving birth, especially, were treated with reverence. All women in Gilead were well fed, had clean clothes, and places to sleep, which Atwood pointed out is better than so many poor and struggling women in the United States today, fighting to juggle jobs and childcare, and often hunger, lack of health care, and homelessness. So is dystopia? I remember thinking a year or two ago that there was a shocking lot of bleak stuff coming down the pike. The preponderance of dread-filled content harshed my zen. It seemed too often that the latest cinematic choices came down to dark or real dark. I began to see that the reason I couldn't escape into those stories was because they didn't offer another world to escape to. They were depicting a world too like the one I was seeing develop in our country. It was too not unlike watching the news. I watch a series like 0 Day with its trailer pitch,
"How can you seek the truth when you can't even trust your own mind?"
and I don't feel like the world depicted there is all that fictional. Or The Last of Us, where a fungal pandemic takes over. I can't find this quite so entertaining today as I might have prior to Brainworm Bobby becoming our Secretary of Health and Instagram gnome promising to eliminate the Federal Emergency Management Agency. How can we not notice that there is a lot less happy on the menu, and not just in the world of entertainment? Dystopia looms everywhere, and it's all interconnected, just like all the threads of a really good plot. I'm an author, I should know. Our forms of entertainment are like a map with a big red arrow pointing to this moment with the inscription, "You are here." In spite of this, there are some cinematic gems. I'm a film buff and a Star Wars fan and a lover of story, so I got really excited about the new season of Andor that premiered this week, which we plan to delve into soon. My husband and I loved the beautifully made first season, so to prepare ourselves for the next, we decided to go back and watch season 1 again, to review the plot lines and refamiliarize ourselves with all the characters. When Andor's premiere season was released in 2022, We weren't quite so obviously living in dystopia, so the first time around it felt thrilling and different and exciting. And it still does, despite how starkly parallel it is to our own world today. Let me break a few things down as I focus in on this series. First, and this could only have happened while I was rewatching it in 2025, not during my original viewing of it in 2022, I now note how astonishingly CPOC-like the concentration camp death prison looks when our hero Cassian is confined without due process and is forced with all the other prisoners to build components of the Death Star. The cruelty, as with the current regime in Washington, is the point. The inhumanity is the point. The disappearing of people is the point. And here is where Andor Season 1 undeniably proves to be a treatise on fascism. Now, let me pause here to say that if you're waiting for me to do my customary thing and insert a story from my adventures in the wild, this is it, right here. Because it's only because of my own wild mind that I have led such an adventurous life, taken so many risks, and have so many tales to tell. I'm asking you to join me as I dwell for a bit on how story shapes our own adventures and defines our reality, because I've lived it. It's wild inside my writer's, filmmaker's, rebel's mind, and when a story gets a hold of me, that's an adventure in and of itself. So this is the wild stuff I want to share with you this time, because it so perfectly fits with where we all are today. Okay, stay with me now and let's get back to Andor Season 1. And if you haven't seen it yet, you might want to hit pause and go watch it, because this is going to be a spoiler if you don't. But I'm betting you will still love it, even if you listen to this podcast first, especially the final episode, because it's a masterpiece. When we watched it this time around, I was struck by the succession of brilliant soliloquies laid layer upon layer as the first season builds to a fabulous finale. Andor Season 1 is not just a treatise on fascism, it's a lesson in hope. As things speed episode by episode to their destined conclusion for all the characters, a monologue from the revolutionary leader Luthen in episode 10 slows the pace deliciously so we can savor it when he is asked what he has sacrificed. His words almost made me weep, in part,
I yearned to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I looked down, there was no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. And the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what did I sacrifice? Everything.
wow. And this is but a small part of it. Another heartbreaking but inspiring speech comes from the beyond as a young male freedom fighter named Nemec, who has been killed, speaks through a device on which he has long been recording a manifesto. I've selected and edited a few of his last lines for brevity here.
There will be times when the struggle seems impossible. I know this already. Alone, unsure, dwarfed by the scale of the enemy. Remember this. Freedom is a pure idea. It occurs spontaneously and without instruction. Random acts of insurrection are occurring constantly throughout the galaxy. There are whole armies, battalions, that have no idea that they've already enlisted in the cause. And know this, the day will come when all these skirmishes and battles, these moments of defiance, will have flooded the banks of the Empire's authority, and then there will be one too many. One single thing will break the siege. Remember this. Try.
For me, the most powerful of these powerfully rendered monologues is Cassian's adopted mother Marva's own death oration, recorded in her final hours so it could be performed by herself as a hologram in her hometown of Ferrix after she has left her mortal life. Again, I've edited it just to give you a taste of the masterful writing.
We've been sleeping. We've had each other and Ferrix, our work, our days. We had each other and they left us alone. We kept the trade lanes open and they left us alone. We took their money and ignored them. We kept their engines churning, and the moment they pulled away, we forgot them because we had each other. We had Ferrix, but we were sleeping. I've been sleeping, and I've been turning away from the truth I wanted not to face.
This is a breathtaking moment in which the dead Marva tries to wake the living community that she loves.
There is a wound that won't heal at the center of the galaxy,
her hologram says.
There is a darkness reaching like rust into everything around us. We let it grow, and now it's here. It's here, and it's not visiting anymore. It wants to stay. The Empire is a disease that thrives in darkness. It's never more alive than when we sleep. It's easy for the dead to tell you to fight, and maybe it's true. Maybe fighting is useless. Perhaps it's too late. But I'll tell you this, if I could do it again, I'd wake up early and be fighting these bastards from the start. Fight the Empire.
Let's come back from the dystopian world of Andor to where we are right now in this country, when the arrest of a circuit court judge crosses a Rubicon, when children who are U.S. citizens and children who are also gravely ill are snatched up and deported by an evil empire that seeks to choke out all dissent and dissolve all justice. Is dystopia? You decide. Should we fight this empire? Looking back at all those who tried to warn us, through all the stories I've cited here and more, many freedom fighters are still speaking to us, like Marva's hologram, after their corporeal lives have ended. From Hans Christian Andersen to Sinclair Lewis, from George Orwell to Ray Bradbury, to the living geniuses of Margaret Atwood and George Lucas and the writers and creators of Andor. And in case you're wondering, I'm with Marva, and I'm with Nemec. It's no matter if you've been asleep, if you're just waking up, or if you're wide screaming awake in this dystopia. We have each other. You're not alone. We're in this together. And whether or not you even know how to begin, remember this. Try. This has been Sandy Alt reporting from the wild. Every week or so, I publish a written blog on Substack, and then a few days after, I produce a variation of it as a podcast with original music, sound effects, and more. I want to give grateful thanks to Andor creator Tony Gilroy and his team of screenwriters Dan Gilroy, Stephen Schiff, and Beau Willimon for the material from Andor Season 1 that I've quoted here. And to the great Michael Clarkson and T. Kearns from my production team for their powerful voiceovers as Luthen and Nemec. You can read and subscribe to the companion blog to this podcast on Substack. And if you want more stories from the wild, look for my Wild Mystery series in book, audiobook, and ebook. You can start with any book in this series and go wild.